All right, folks. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are joining us from around the world. Welcome back to Creation Conversations. And with us today, we have a very special guest, David Rives. David, it's good to see you.
It is good to see you, Joe.
Yeah, it's been a long old while since we saw each other last, and it was just days before I had to pack my bags and rush to the airport to try and get home. This was all pre-COVID, so it's very nice to see your face again, even though we are on separate continents in different parts of the world in different time zones. So, welcome to Creation Conversations.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, what we're going to do, because we're going to talk a little bit about you and about your ministry and also your background. And I actually notice behind you on the screen there looks like to be a little bit of telescope sticking out. So I know this is something that has fascinated you for many years. But before we get into that, just tell us a little bit about yourself and about how you sort of got into David Rives Ministries, a bit about the ministry itself and how it can help others and help our viewers.
Yeah, well, I guess this has been about probably 13, 14 years ago. I got interested in astronomy just as a hobby, and I started to use telescopes to look through the telescopes. And eventually I said, well, what would happen if we connected a camera to the back of the telescope? Instead of looking through the telescope, let's see if we can do some astrophotography, photos of space. And that there's a little bit more of an art to it than most people think. It took a lot of experimentation. But eventually, telescopes got larger, the camera equipment got a little bit better, and I think the first decent photo, hang on a second, let me see if I can pull this up. First decent photo I ever got through a telescope was this one right here. And
oh wow!
this,
I mean, that is just stunning, isn't it? I mean, I've viewed I've had a play around with telescopes and stuff, but the best you ever sort of get is just looking at it through a pair of binoculars. It's nothing like that. That is absolutely fantastic.
No, I know it was. I mean, my jaw dropped to the floor. This was I think, kind of the second photo, and it's of the same thing, but it's more real color. So the blues, the purples, the reds, everything you see there, that's actually out there, and you can analyze the color spectrums and figure out what types of gases and nebula are in these gases and dusts are in these nebulae and in these galaxies. This is the Rosette Nebula, and this was probably the third or fourth thing that I took a picture of through the telescope. The Rosette Nebula looks kind of like a rose in space, doesn't it?
It's just stunning, isn't it? That's absolutely gorgeous. Some amazing. It's when you really do get the point that the psalmist was making about the heavens declaring the glory of God. About when I look at the universe, what is man that thou art worthy of him? It blows your mind to sort of look at some of these. So I'm assuming that has that sort of stuff has greatly, and that sort kind of view of the universe has greatly affected the way that you have got involved into the ministry as well.
Entirely, because I was probably 17 years old at the time, and I had no idea what I really wanted to do with my life. When I took that first picture, my jaw dropped to the floor. I'd always seen these pictures in space telescopes, Hubble Space Telescope, all these beautiful magazine pictures, and I'm like, hey, they probably colored that up or doctored. It can't look that good. And then I took the picture for myself, and just like you said, it was like, in an instant, Psalm 19, the heavens declare the glory of God. The firmament shows his handiwork. It says that day into day utters speech, and night after night shows knowledge, but there's no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. So what does it say? It's almost saying that the heavens are screaming out at us that there has to be a designer, a grand creator, that we're not cosmic accidents, the result of star stuff billions of years ago. And that's when the ministry began. I was like, why am I keeping this to myself? Why is this a hobby? Could I not use this in ministry?
Yeah.
And that's how it began. That's literally how it began.
A creator who is not only a grand designer, but a beautiful artist who's able to just it really does. It does blow your mind for some of the spectacular stuff, and not just on a big scale as well. Because I know you have lots of people on your show, and we can talk about your show in just a second. But you look at the universe. It's one thing, but you go the opposite way, and you go down into the microscope, and you have just as much beauty and patterns, and it's just like two ridiculously different scales, and all evidence for the great designer. So tell us a bit about your ministry. How's it? What do you do now? What are some of the ways that people can access your resources, and a little bit about sort of that background?
Absolutely. Well, I'll just throw up a couple of pictures really quick.
Sure.
This is my latest book is 21 Verses Backed by Science. My first book was Wonders Without Number. I looked at astronomy primarily in my first book. Dr. Danny Faulkner, PhD in astronomy, wrote the foreword to it. The second book looks a little bit more at general science and verses scattered throughout the Bible that are confirmed or affirmed by scientific principles. In the ministry, I also have a television program on TBN, which it is global. It's available in pretty much every language in pretty much every country in the world. It's called Creation, and it airs in the U.S. Saturdays at 1:30 p.m., where basically we just talk about different scientific principles and how they connect with the biblical record. Genesis Science Network is something that our ministry formed about 5 years ago, which it started out, I love Discovery Channel, I love National Geographic, but I hate the atheistic spin that they always put on those things. And my brother and I, we were like, why isn't there a Discovery Channel for Christians? So we created it, and the Lord's blessed it tremendously. We received salvation reports. It's 100% free to the public. GenesisScienceNetwork.com, or you can find it on Roku. You can find it on Amazon Fire TV. Plus, guess what? Genesis Science Network just started airing a few weeks ago. What was it? Creation Unplugged? It's one of your programs.
Yes, yeah. Creation Research Unplugged. It was one of those funny, we'd finished, obviously, I had an entire itinerary planned out for the States, for Canada, for Australia, New Zealand. It was all, it was supposed to take us right up to the end of June, and then I was supposed to fly home in time to get married, kind of thing. Yeah. And beginning of March, everything cancelled. So we find ourselves home. And by the way, this was, the laws in the UK have been up and down and all over the place throughout the last year. But at this point, we'd arrived home, and you were not allowed out of your house to go to work or do anything other than shopping for essentials and for one walk a day for exercise. That was all that we had. And so we're stuck here, and we're like, well, how are we going to do ministry? How are we supposed to do ministry, And so I sort of thought, well, why don't we try and throw together, or, pull together a sort of an online television series of some description. And, it was the same in Australia. They were in lockdown and so on and so forth. So we got John Mackay over in Australia trying to film some stuff, and we filmed some stuff, and we'd often go for our daily exercise and basically film our daily exercise trying to talk about the plants and stuff that we did. So it all sort of was thrown together, and we had challenges. Computers crashed at halfway through, and I know you helped us sort of on deciding what were the best computer to get to be able to edit on. But yeah, it came together, and it worked, and then we're now currently halfway through filming and preparing our second series, which should come out fairly soon. So we'll let you know how that goes and when that's happening as well. So and of course, the great thing about Genesis Science Network, and I think emphasizes, it's completely free.
Yeah,
and most people can afford that.
That's the thing. I mean, so many times you get these subscription plans, and it's like, well, what about the people on the fence? What about those who don't want to hear about creation? They will never pay to get this content, but they need to hear the content. So we said, well, let's just make this free of charge and, donor supported. And so we air all sorts of programming, from hundreds and hundreds of pieces of content that we've produced to, of course, your stuff, John Mackay's stuff, all sorts of friends with Christian documentaries, nature documentaries on creation, 24/7. And again, it's making a difference. We've received salvation reports.
That's great.
We also do yearly dinosaur digs or paleontological digs. For those of your viewers in the States, come check it out. September 2021, I'll be leading a dig to Kansas, paleontological dig to Kansas. in about a few weeks, I'm going to be in Africa on an African
Hey.
photo safari. It's the second time I've led this, and I just I can't tell you. It's one of my favorite things to do in the entire world, to see the nature and the design of the animals in Africa. So maybe you want to join me at some point there. Sign up for our free Creation Club magazine. Just go to our website, davidrives.com, and click on the magazine link. And we'll send it to your door every other month. And then you can also check us out on YouTube. If you're in the States, you can check out our Wonders Center in Lewisburg, Tennessee, where we've got all
It's
sorts of
pretty epic, the
displays.
Wonder Center. Yeah, it's pretty marvelous. I've been there a couple of times now. It is fantastic.
Well, and I want to thank you, Joe, for what you've done and for just the incredible time and effort that you've put in to come to the States, to be on the program with me on episodes of TV, and just to share the truth.
Yeah,
So
it's
anyway, it's
always
all a
it's
joint effort.
always absolutely, it's always a pleasure. And we had loads of stuff lined up last time, and it all just got cancelled straight away. And they were threatening not to let me back in the country, and so on and so forth. So, but I say, as soon as it opens up, there's talk about opening up a green corridor between the UK and the States later on in the year. So as soon as that does, I'm looking forward to be getting back there. Let me just update you on a couple of things, because we can go back to stars in a minute and have a talk about some of the work that you've done with astronomy, and how that sort of relates, and a bit of the biblical point as well. Let me just show our viewers a couple of exciting things that have happened. So many of you know we're preparing our Creation Research Museum project. It's here in the UK. Our idea is to get a network of museums, and also in Australia we've got Jurassic Ark and the Tasmanian Creation Discovery Centre. We want to develop something in the USA as well, and we've chatted with David about that. But this is what our two new reptilian friends that turned up to our museum project just the other day. We were able to, they practically donated to us, which was a wonderful blessing, two of our wonderful dinosaur models. And you can see them nice and up close there. Now, they currently don't have a name. So we are running a sort of a competition, if you like, on our Facebook page. If anybody who's watching this has any suggestions, find Creation Research on your Facebook. Find the post; it was put up just a couple of days ago, because the most common suggestion will end up going into a live draw that we're going to be doing later on this year, or a live poll rather later on this year, to decide what we should name them, because we're actually using these two dinosaurs for our first big traveling museum display, which is something that I've been trying to work on for a very long time, to actually have a sort of remote or a traveling museum display that we can take around and put stuff on display for people. And we're trialing it at an event called Creation Fest in the UK, down in Cornwall. So if you're in the UK, do come along to that. It's free to go into, so even better. And one other little thing that we've had added to the museum collection just yesterday is this rather enormous stalactite. Now, if you know anything about creation research, you know that we're pretty keen when it comes to stalactites and cave formations. In fact, I think John has done a program with you, David, I think, about cave formations and how fast they grow and stuff like that. So one of our first projects that we want to do in the UK is to actually design a museum exhibit on stalactites and stalagmites and cave formation. And people can find, there's a free video to watch up on our YouTube channel about Chirk Canal Tunnel and some of the wonderful stalactites that are forming in this very, very young canal tunnel that was built by Thomas Telford just a couple of 100 years ago. And that's only about a 5 minute drive from where I currently live in Shropshire. Wow. So we're only about a 5-10 minute drive from where our museum project is. So we want to be able to actually get all this stuff on display. But this is a beautiful stalactite from China. It was shipped in. It was we were able to acquire it just a couple of days ago. from an old collection who'd sadly deceased and passed on, and it was passed on to us. So we're very, very grateful for that, and that will be able to go on our museum display as well. So lots and lots of exciting stuff that's going on with creation research at the moment as well. So I'm looking forward to being able to come over to the States and share it more with you properly in a slightly better studio than I'm sitting in now. So let's go back to talk about some more about the sort of the stars and the astronomy, because you mentioned earlier, there's the biblical connection and how you just sort of stand in awe out of some of this. How have you been able to sort of take that and turn it into a functioning ministry, if you like, that focuses on this, the heavens declare that, that declare God's greatness and God's power as creator?
I think that it's one of the greatest mysteries for so many people, because we still don't know a lot about cosmology and astronomy.
Absolutely,
simply because we can look through telescopes and we can gather data, but most of these things we'll never be able to touch. We'll never be able to actually collect samples from and observe. So, I mean, it is a great frontier for study, and yet it's been used by the atheistic community for so long to sort of push this idea of a universe so vast that there must be extraterrestrial life. And my point is, well, the secular idea of 14 billion years ago, all the matter in the universe was compacted into a very small point, which then rapidly expanded outwards, creating the universe, creating space-time as it went. That does not hold up to scientific scrutiny. But when we look back at the biblical record, of course, we see that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And we find the very origin of time, space, and matter in the first verse of Scripture, right? Because in the beginning, that's the origin of time. God's outside of time. He doesn't need time. He created time for us. Okay, so in the beginning is the origin of time. God created the heaven, there's space, and the earth, there's matter. If you look at Big Bang cosmology, it attempts to explain where time and space came from, but it does not even attempt to answer where the matter came from. If you ask a secular cosmologist, astrophysicist today, where did the matter come from? They're like, oh, that's not part of cosmology. We don't even discuss that. That's for someone else to discover. But if you can't answer that, then you have to think up a supernatural origin for it, because naturally, there's no way that matter, an entire universe of matter, just pops into existence. That means that if there's no natural way, it must have been supernaturally created, and we have the historical account, don't we, in the book of Genesis?
It's written down, it's documented in history. I remember my first ever professor that I had at university. He was a very honest, if you want to put it that way, or very sort of open-minded professor. He was an atheist, evolutionist, but his background was physical science, so majority physics, but also he did sort of paleoclimatology, so the history of climate on Earth and stuff like that. But he loved the physics and he loved this kind of stuff. So he was teaching this course, and it started with stuff like global warming and the Ice Age, and it sort of went all the way through to the history of life and so on and so forth. And while he was, he taught evolution as in this has been an observable fact in the fossil record. But when it came to stuff like the origin of life and the origin of the universe, if you asked him, as I did, where did the origin of life come from? Where did the matter originate from in the Big Bang? What actually triggered it all? He said, now he was sort of open-minded enough to realize, because he'd go, now we're not actually talking about science. We're talking about philosophy here, and you could quite easily bring religion into it as well, because the reality is science can't answer that question. It can't answer the question, where did life come from? It can't answer the question, where did the matter come from? What sparked the Big Bang, and so on and so forth. Science deals with the evidence, the here and now. Now, obviously, part of his thinking was flawed, and we know that because of the belief in evolution and so on and so forth, and there's plenty of resources that our viewers can go and delve in and watch that. But it was interesting to me that he had enough sort of a revelation to realize that actually, when you're asking questions like how did life begin, where did the matter come from, you are having to rely on some kind of a faith, whether that's faith in God's word, or whether that's faith in, mystic New Age, or even the evolutionists' faith, which is it just happens, So it's a fascinating thing to look into, and really just sort of show the wonder and power and majesty of our Creator.
It does. And if you think about it, the first law of thermodynamics states that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Well, Einstein comes along and he's like, matter is just an expression of energy. So matter can neither be created nor destroyed. It can change form, but it can't be created or destroyed. So if in the natural world there is no way to create matter, then it must have happened in the supernatural world. And I mean, I think that most astrophysicists get that, but they don't really want to talk about it because it means, as you said, Joe, they have to admit that they have faith in the supernatural.
Yes.
They just don't want that. Usually they don't want that faith to be faith in the God of the Bible. They'll many times point it back to, well, origin of life, maybe aliens. But that just backs it up even further. Well, who created the aliens?
Well, you're pushing the problem from Earth to outer space. That's all you're doing. Yeah,
exactly.
The problem is still there. It's still very, very big and open. And it's. I remember you get stuff in stuff that's been sort of going around in the news and the like. And there's they've just sent the Mars rover, and stunning imaging. I'm sure you've seen some of the stunning image that we're now able to collect and send back to us. But they're still looking in the hope that there's some kind of extraterrestrial life, or at least this tiniest bit of evidence, in the hope that they are one step closer to finding out the answers about the origin of the universe, finding out the answers about the origin of life. It's almost foolishness.
They're desperate. They're desperate at this point because they have expected for so long that if the universe has indeed been around for 14 billion years, if our solar system has been around for 4.5 to 5 billion years, then surely some type of bacterial life must have evolved somewhere else. But even if they find bacteria or some type of life on Mars, they probably brought it on the rover
by themselves.
This is a major problem for NASA and the astronomers. They're so concerned about destroying life on other planets when they get there that they have all of these sterilization procedures for their spacecraft that they send to these planets because we don't want to destroy this alien life. I'm here to tell you, we found upwards of 3,000 extrasolar planets. That's rocks orbiting around other stars. Over 3,000 possibilities to contain life, of a planet that could contain life. And you see the reports in the mainstream headlines all the time. Oh, we found a planet and it probably contains life. I remember there was one not long ago, it's been several years, planet, I think it was 58 Gliese b, and they said, we found a planet. It's orbiting a star outside of our solar system. It looks like it's the correct size and mass for moderated gravity. It looks like it's the correct distance from its host star. It looks like it probably contains water. It looks like it, and they went on to list all of these things. And so it probably also has life that has evolved on this planet. And this is major headlines. And a few months later, buried in the back pages of the newspaper, oops, we made a mistake. There's not even a planet there. We misread the data.
And I think the big push to look for life in outer space is it's not only about finding and proving that evolution could happen somewhere else and so on and so forth. And obviously that comes into it, but I think it's also about devaluating planet Earth, because according to evolution, we are here simply by chance. We are just a ordinary planet orbiting a fairly small ordinary star. It happened by chance. It could happen somewhere else. It just so happens it happened here, which is exactly opposite to what the Bible teaches. The Earth was the first thing created there with the space and time and everything, and then the sun, moon, and stars came in around it and was all put into motion, and it was the only place to sustain life. It was designed to sustain life. It was the only planet out of all of those hundreds of exosolar planets that God himself chose to come to and save the people that only the only creatures made in his image. That's and right. The earth is a special place, and of course the Bible talks that there's going to be a new heavens and a new earth. So I think a big push of this, we're trying to find extraterrestrial life, is just to go, earth isn't really special at all. It gives you another excuse to get rid of God, really.
Yeah, to devalue Earth, as you said. And that's basically, so the Copernican principle started looking and saying, well, maybe Earth's not the center of the universe, right? Which, okay. But then that turned into the mediocrity principle, the idea that the Earth is nothing special. Carl Sagan comes along and he says, well, it's just a pale blue dot floating in space, just a tiny rock in the middle of a vast expanse, nothing really, right? But when we look at the factors that makes Earth able to sustain life, we see that Earth is in the middle of a universe that, for the most part, is hostile to life. When we look at even our galaxy, if we were to look at our galaxy, we realize that just, for instance, if we were towards the outer edge of our galaxy, we wouldn't have enough heavy elements for Earth to sustain life. If we were, because the farther out on the edge of the galaxy, the less heavy elements there are. Now, we pretty much know that in the middle of our spiral galaxy, the Milky Way, there's a giant black hole. All right, you don't want to live near a black hole. Anything that gets past the event horizon of this black hole disappears forever. Not even gravity can escape. So you don't want to live in the center. Well, we don't. We don't live near the edge. We don't live near the center. We live in between the Sagittarius and Perseus arms, nestled in an area that's perfect for life. Then you look at the distance from the sun, 93 million miles away, perfect distance for habitability. Then you look at the shape of our orbit. It was a very elliptical, very oval-shaped orbit. We would be boiling hot, freezing cold, boiling hot, freezing cold. Instead, we have a nearly circular orbit, mildly elliptical orbit. We have a moon that is the largest moon proportionally out of all of the other moons in the entire solar system. And because of that, it helps stabilize Earth's axis. It helps circulate the warm and cold waters of the oceans to regulate the temperatures. You could just go down, 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 down. The fact that we have a strong geomagnetic field that not only enables our compasses to work, our GPSs to work, but also it helps protect us from cosmic radiation, solar wind, which bounces right off of this geomagnetic field. Otherwise, we would be baked to death within hours. All of these things, they add up to what? Coincidence? No, I don't think so. Just like, we started out, my catchphrase since the beginning has been the heavens declare the glory of God. But if the heavens declare his glory, well, then the earth also tells us something special, which I think Isaiah 45 clearly indicates. It says, thus saith the Lord, God himself who formed the earth and made it, he hath established it, he created it not in vain, he formed it, get this, he formed it to be inhabited. In other words, God made the earth for us to live on. He made the heavens to proclaim his glory so that we could look out there and we would be like, wow, what has he done? How big is God?
Yeah, and it just blows your mind. Even the mundane stuff that we've grown up with and know about every single day, like tides. I'm in a fairly small island. I know it's not the same for the States, and you could be hundreds, if not thousands, of miles away from the sea. But I'm in a fairly small island. You're only a few miles away from the sea wherever you are, and it's I was just walking along and I wanted to see these dinosaurs. I was down in the Isle of Wight a few weeks ago. I wanted to see this dinosaur trackway, this footprint trackway, which you got to see. It was remarkable, but they're right out, so the tide has to be very, very low, so you need to have a full moon or a new moon to be able to get out there and see them, right? And we timed it right. We managed to go and see them, and you've only got about a 20-30 minute window before the tide turns and it comes back on you. And I remember standing there with the water coming in around my feet and thinking, there's a massive, great big object in the sky that 2 hours ago was sucking all of the water that way into a great big bulge in the middle of the sea, and 2 hours later, it's now sucking all the water back this way. And you just think, what kind of, imagine if we wanted to design something like that. Imagine if there wasn't such a thing as a moon or tides or whatever, and we were trying to create a fictional planet, and we were trying to calculate the physics and the maths needed just to do something like that. We wouldn't know where to start. Right. And yet here it happens every single day, in, out, and it's, it really does leave you, the more you think about it and the more you delve into this stuff, the more it leaves you standing in awe of the amazing design that the Creator has given us.
Absolutely. And the fact that we can even calculate the maths and the physics that govern these things, that's incredible in and of itself, because mathematics is abstract, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I have a friend who's an astrophysicist. He says you can't stump your toe on a number 3. The number 3 doesn't exist. It's in our head. And yet, because we can take all of the laws and physics of the universe and reduce them down to numbers on a scrap of paper, it means, here's what it means. It means that we are created in the image of a God who created us, who created the laws and physics of nature using mathematics. Then he created us in his image with just this tiniest fraction of his mind, with this tiniest fraction of the ability to comprehend these numbers of the laws and mathematics that govern the universe. That's the only way to explain how we're even able to comprehend this. And then we look at the size of the universe. We can't even, there's no way to comprehend that. And that's what's so special, because I look out with using these giant observatory class telescopes that my ministry uses. I see the grandeur and the size of the universe. And yet, even though Earth is this tiny speck floating in space, it is so special that God sent his only begotten Son, that he reduced himself to flesh, that he came down to this earth to live, die, and be raised again, because he cares about us. He loves us. He wants a relationship with us for eternity. That's what's so that's what the gospel message is all about. And that's what's so important about this entire topic of astronomy.
And that's the essence of both yours and our ministry. It's I say over and over again, we're not here to make creationists out of people. We're here to make Christians. We're here to give people the gospel. We do it through the creation message, which I know we both believe is a very important part of the salvation message. It's a very important foundational part of the Bible, and the whole sort of it's where Christianity all started, with Jesus Christ when he created the world. And that's what we're here for. We're using the amazing world which God has given us to point people to Christ. And the thing about, you say about like the maths and the laws and stuff, and one thing that proves to me is that we don't live in a random chance universe. We live in an ordered universe. Random chance doesn't produce law and order. We've seen random chance happening. It just produces a mess. And yet we look at the universe around us, and it's brilliantly ordered.
Which is the reason that these atheistic cosmologists have started the idea of a multiverse, right?
Yes.
They're like, this is way, way too structured to ever happen by chance. Yeah. So we must have millions and billions of universes out there, and this one just happened to get it right.
Right. Yeah.
They just keep having to back up the problem because everything is too structured to ever happen by chance.
Yeah, and it's that verse in Scripture, professing themselves to be wise, they end up looking foolish.
Foolish,
because it's the only way you can describe such things. It's foolishness, directly rejecting the evidence in front of your eyes and resorting to foolishness in order to get rid of God at the end of the day.
Paul told the Romans, right? He said the invisible things, since the creation of the world, they're being clearly understood, even God's eternal power, the Godhead itself, so that we're without excuse. In other words, all you have to do is look around at creation, and it's evident there is a creator. Even the microscopic things, the things we're seeing through telescopes, the invisible things that we haven't even known of, but they were created at the very beginning, those are all pointing us back to God. They're pointing us back to our designer, Jesus Christ.
That's great. Well, David, we're going to have to call it short there because we have reached time. But thank you ever so much for coming on and doing this with us. I know it's been greatly appreciated in the chat. There's lots of people who really like the star pictures and stuff. We haven't got any time for any questions or comments, but thank you ever so much, David. It's been absolutely wonderful. God bless you. God bless your ministry. A quick reminder to everybody who is watching this. Let's just put this up on the screen. If you want to find out more about David's ministry, or all the links, I believe, are on this website here, davidrives.com. Is that right?
That's correct. davidrives.com. You can
so you
find
can
the free
access
magazine and everything.
All of it. Perfect. Yeah. So do check that out. Follow, of course, if you can support David's ministry and the Genesis Science Network. It's, I mean, just running a ministry, I know, is an extortionate expense. So do support where you can, and continue to watch Creation Conversations and all of the different stuff that goes out on the Genesis Science Network as well. Well, goodbye, folks. We'll have to say goodbye now, and thank you very much for joining us. Catch us next time.
Thank you, Joe.